This video is going to be how to replace the diaphragm plunger, the diaphragm backer, or the actual diaphragm or non-return valve. Just start by loosening the 4 diaphragm housing screws and separate the 2 diaphragm housings from each other. You'll see the non-return valve. Just check that that is still working and functioning with the spring. Put your 4 diaphragm housing screws somewhere safe, and you can take the diaphragm off of the diaphragm housing. Pay attention to the little brass busher, which can get lost easily. It makes the diaphragm a lot easier to seat when you need to put it back. It also keeps the diaphragm seated inside the housing. Remove the diaphragm backer. Just check that it's not cracked or damaged in any way. And to remove the plunger, you will need a shifting spanner or a pair of water pump pliers. Unscrew the diaphragm plunger. They are not generally very tight, so they do come out easily. When it comes out, pay attention to all the components that come out to make sure that you put the right ones back in with the new plunger. So here the spring just comes out, and the little brass seat for the spring actually fell onto the table, and here I pick it up and put it back onto the diaphragm plunger itself, so you can just see how it seats in the spring. Now you'll notice there is a little black O-ring missing, which is actually still inside the diaphragm housing itself. So here inside the housing you can see the little black O-ring inside there. It is covered up by a bit of grease, but know that it is still inside there. So generally we don't actually try and get that out. Just take the O-ring off of the new plunger and make sure that the brass seat is still on there as well. So on the new plunger you can see the brass seat is there. Push it back in, make sure that it goes through that original O-ring that is still in there, and then you can tighten the plunger. The plunger doesn't need to be particularly tight, but it is important to make sure that there is a bit of tension on there so that it does not leak from there. Once you've done that, you can put the backer back on. Again, if you need to replace it, put a new backer on, and just check that the micro switch opens when you push on the plunger. Use the little brass seat, put it back in the diaphragm, and pay attention to the way that the diaphragm goes back into the diaphragm housing. You have a concave and convex side of the diaphragm, and make sure that the side that is concave goes onto the diaphragm backer, so the side that protrudes in and goes onto the backer. Once you've put it back in place, make sure that there's no pinches on the diaphragm between the diaphragm and the housing. If there's a pinch, it will cause it to leak, and you'll have to start the process over again by removing the diaphragm and putting it back in correctly. Have a look around, make sure there's nothing pinched and you can't see the diaphragm sticking out anywhere, and then you can go ahead and put the 4 diaphragm housing screws back in. Don't tighten one all the way, otherwise you can offset it and pinch the diaphragm. So tighten each one bit by bit, and then right at the end, one last final tighten for each screw. And as you're doing this, you're just checking that the diaphragm is not pinched anywhere and that everything looks the way that it should be.